White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre is at it again, this time talking about Bidenomics. You got to hear this.
India. Thanks, Karine. I wanted to ask you about this new Bidenomics messaging push. Can you just give me a sense first of, how did you guys coin that phrase, or why did you decide to go with that branding going forward?
You don't like Bidenomics?
No, I'm just asking. I'm curious.
I think it's pretty clever. It's pretty good. It makes good sense. Bidenomics, right? It kind of flows off the tongue really well. But in all seriousness, look, what you're going to hear from the president, I don't want to get ahead of him, but I think we've kind of laid out a little bit of what we are thinking, or what we think the president's going to lay out, or what he is going to lay out. Certainly it's a vision, right? It's a vision about growing the economy from the middle out, the bottom up. You hear us say that over and over again because we believe that trickle-down economics does not work. And we have seen that over and over and over again. And what we have seen, even before the pandemic, is we've seen American families being left behind.
Okay, we just got to deal with this because it's what she's saying is just, I don't want to get away from it and let her get away with saying things that aren't actually true. So why don't we just go into actually look at the data? This is from this is the data from the Labor Department, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this is inflation. This is the Biden inflation. And I'm just going to go down to the numbers because I think they're easier to deal with. The chart is. Right here's when Biden took office, and you'll see it went way up, bounced down a little bit. Now it's kind of settling. But when he took office, you didn't have massive inflation, and I'm going to show you what the numbers actually look like. And I start from the first year when Donald Trump comes into office, January of 2017. Inflation for the first 3 months in January, that President Trump was in office, 0.4%, 0.2%, 0.0%. Then you go throughout, and you can see in 2019, the last healthy year before COVID, 0%, 0.2%, 0.3%, 0.4%, 0%, negative 0.1%, 0.2%. 0.1%, 0.2%, 0.3%, 0.2%, 0.3%, 2020, 0.2%, 0.1%, and then you had COVID and you get deflation, negative 0.4, negative 0.8, negative 0.1. So but if you notice, from 2019 to February 2020, you are pretty much bouncing between negative 0.1% and with 1.4% in there, and the rest are 3 1s, 2s, and 3s. Okay, very low inflation rate. So you get to Biden years, January, February, March of you look at first 3 months of Biden, 0.2%, 0.4%, 0.5%, 0.7%, 0.7%, 0.8%, 0.4%, 0.4%, 0.4%, 0.9%, 0.8%, 0.8%. This is the inflation that was flowing through the economy because of the overspending, and people like former Treasury secretaries for the Clinton administration talk about how the Biden recovery package, where he had to send out helicopter money to everybody because Trump did it. So he wanted to send out his own helicopter money with his own face on it. And that's what triggered this. That's the consensus of economists, Democrat and Republican alike, is that Biden basically came in and said, I got to spend money too. And lo and behold, he did. He and Nancy Pelosi jumped on the spending train. And so, as you might expect, so in 2022, you get suddenly you begin to wash some of the money that they floated in the economy out of it, and you get 0.6, 0.7, then you get 1%, 0.4%, 0.9%, 1.2%, and then it kind of shifts, and you see a 0%, 2.2%, and right here's where we're at. This is why I go to here. Because what you're seeing now is really somewhat of a normalization that's directly a result of the higher interest rates that the Federal Reserve has imposed. The Federal Reserve jumped in and started raising interest rates, and they did so in order to drop these numbers precipitously. It had nothing to do with Biden. Biden's continuing to spend money. In 2022, he spent $6.275 trillion. He spent over 1.5 trillion more than we had, than we brought in, and we had a record amount of money that came in 2022. We had about $5 trillion come in. So it was record spending. I guess it's 1.275 deficit, but trillion deficit. But we had record income, and yet we still spent 6.275. And this upcoming year, his budget that he put out was $6.7 trillion. So he wanted to jump in another $500 billion in terms of spending. So you're really looking at, Biden's policies had nothing to do with reducing inflation. The Federal Reserve trying to kill the economy had something to do with it. But I'm going to show you a little trick. You're going to see right now inflation is 4%. And in June, let's say they get a 4%, a 0.4% number, and just hypothetically, you're going to see the inflation rate go down to 3.2%. It's not magic, because this 1.2% number here is going to fall off. It'll cease to be counted in the annual because they only go back 12 months. So as that number falls off, then it gets replaced by, let's say, a 0.4%, you'd have a net 0.8% drop, and your inflation rate would go from 4% down to 3.2%. And into that, Joe Biden's going to give a speech. He's going to say, look, we're defeating inflation. It's all our policies, and it's actually the Federal Reserve. But they've got a problem, and America's got a problem, because you still are paying way more for gas. You're paying $1 a gallon more for gas than you did when Trump left office. You're paying significantly more for utilities, for energy, for basically your food. All those things, all those prices have gone up. And when they talk about, gee, we're at 3.2% inflation, that's not 3.2% inflation above what it was when Biden took office. That's 3.2% inflation after we dealt with having an 8.9% inflation during the first year of Biden's presidency. So essentially it's cumulative. It's not you can't look back and say, 2020 we had a inflation rate of about 1.6%, and then go off and then say, oh well, let's talk about this. I guess it's a little higher than that, but let's talk about this. We're not starting from scratch. We're starting from a level that's 8 to 10% higher. And so when they start talking about we're down to 3.2%, 3.2% is on top of massive inflation over the course of the last year and a half. But then, once again, when you get down to it, in July, you're going to have an inflation rate bop up. You have an inflation rate likely bop up again in August. Probably remain about the same in September, maybe about the same or a little less in October. It's going to probably go up in November, and it'll probably go up in December. And that's just based on the numbers that are coming off. So you're going to end up with an inflation rate at the end of the year, probably around 4%, which is pretty much in alignment with what the Federal Reserve is guessing we're going to be at. So that's first of all, inflation's out of control, remains out of control. And it's out of control because you're not taking any of it back. The inflation was put on your back in the first 18 months of the Biden administration, remains on your back. And so when they only add 4% to it, 3.5% to it, that's 3.5% on top of the breaking point that you already received. But let's talk about what this actually did to wages, because she likes to talk about wages. And I'm just going to go back and let her say it.
And so one of the things that the data, if you look at the data and what we've seen from what the president has been able to deliver in the last 2 years, is an economy that's getting back on its feet, an economy that's actually delivering for the American people, 13 million jobs, unemployment rate at under 4%. When you think about wages going up, when you think about inflation at its lowest.
Okay, hold on, let her finish.
By more than 50%.
Okay, so inflation is lower 50. Well, she's saying Inflation is down 50% from where it was when we drove it up through the roof through our spending. But beyond that, once again, she said, people are making more money. She's saying people are actually doing better. Real wages are up. Well, are real wages up? Well, the answer is no. Real wages are not up. This once again from Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'm going to increase it a little bit so you can see it better. This is the data from Bureau of Labor Statistics. Once again, starting from Trump, the first 3 months of the Trump administration, negative, when real wages were down 0.6%, negative 0.4%, and negative 0.1%. And then from April to January of 2020, real wages went up every single month during the Trump administration. Now some were zeros, okay, in fairness, December was a zero in 2019. But by and large, real wages went up. What that meant was your earning power. Real wages are a combination of how much you're getting paid, and I figure it at an hourly basis, how much you're getting paid on an hourly basis, multiplied by how many hours you're allowed to work during a week on average. This comes from surveys of employers and a whole bunch of different surveys that come together. And so then they multiply it and they say, okay, here's how much money you're making in a week. So if you're making $20 an hour and you're able to work 40 hours a week, then you made $800 that week. You can be making $25 an hour, but if you're only working 30 hours a week, you're making less money. And so that's how the compilation goes. So real wages under Donald Trump went up pretty significantly. And I'm going to just cut it I usually cut it at February of 2020, because in fairness, the COVID data is all messed up because it goes up dramatically, as you see, 7.1, 7.4, 5.0. The reason for that is when the economy shut down, a lot of people who basically people who work for hourly wages weren't getting paid. They were on unemployment. Right? We jumped to 22 million people unemployed right away in March and April of 2022. That number got cut dramatically over the next few months as the economies reopened, and particularly in red states. But it was when they talk about wages since they weren't paying, the people they're surveying weren't paying people who were working for minimum wage and the like. They were getting paid to stay home. It was a pretty, this number gets all squirrely, so we're not going to even deal with that. But so let's look what happens in 2021. Biden comes in 5.9%, still continuation off of the COVID numbers. 4.1%, 4.1%. What happened in 2021 immediately was the blue states that stayed closed during 2020 because they didn't want Donald Trump to get credit for their states reopening and for the unemployment rate going down there, reopened in January of 2021. And so suddenly the people start getting jobs, people start re-entering the workforce. So in April 2021, real wages down 1.4%, real wages down 2.2%, real wages down 0.7%, real wages down 0.3%. So you see real wages start declining. Once again, real wages are how much money you're making against how much the inflation rate is. So how much money you're really taking home, not how much money is in your paycheck, but what's your money worth? That's what it is. And then she's talking about people getting bigger paychecks. They got bigger paychecks, but she's ignoring the fact that they got screwed on the other side because they didn't just get bigger paychecks. They also got more inflation. And so you can see that apart from the first 3 months of the Biden administration, they have run a consistent track record of negative real earnings. Negative real earnings. People falling further behind. And it's a combination of a crummy economy, which isn't growing, and where wages not keeping up with inflation. And the fact of the matter is, even with the inflation going down, the wages continue to shrink and not even get the same level as the lower inflation rate. So when they come up to you and want to sell you a bill of goods that, gee, people are making more money, they're going to say, oh, payrolls are up, paychecks are up, people are getting paid more. And they don't want to talk about the real wages, which is the real earnings, which is what people are getting paid compared to the inflation rate, and how that's impacting their ability to buy stuff on a day-to-day basis. Because if you work harder to make more money, but you're still having your paycheck eaten up by higher inflation than the raise you got, that is no raise at all. And so Joe Biden's inflation, the Biden inflation, is directly responsible for people earning less, working harder, taking less home, in real terms, in terms of what it can buy to feed your family. That's the Biden economy. That's Bidenomics. And oh, by the way, do you think anybody's actually buying this stuff? Well, there's a June poll, a Harris poll, that came out a couple of days ago. Perception of the country declines. Now less than a third say right track. So less than a third of the people say our country's on the right track. 62% say nope, wrong track. Perception of the U.S. economy remains poor. 63% say wrong track on the U.S. economy. 29% say right track. Not a great sign for somebody who's going to go off and claim this economy when only 29% think it's on the right track. Kind of a hard sell. How strong do you think the economy is today? You think it's strong or not? 62% say it's weak. 38% say it's strong. Say your personal financial situation is improving or getting worse. 49% say their personal financial situation is getting worse. 26% say their personal financial situation is getting better, and 25% say no change in my financial situation. So, this is how people are answering the economic questions. So the answer is very simple in all this. No. Karine, no. The American people don't buy what you're selling. And quite honestly, by the look on your face, I don't think you do either. This is Rick Manning signing off for Americans for Limited Government. Please, if you like what we're doing, please share. It's really important. We just really appreciate when you take our data and you share it. We try to provide you with information that you can use. And with Joe Biden expected to give a major economic address in this next couple of days, I thought it was important that we provide you with some information that you can use, a video that you can share to show people exactly what really is going on with the nation's economy. And with that, we'll see you tomorrow